So you're listening to NYC Radio Live. I'm in conversation with the great guitarist Eric Thompson, multi-instrumentalist actually. How's it going? How are you feeling?
Oh, excellent, excellent. Got up and
Um,
I've had my tea and I'm looking forward to coming east.
that's right. So I guess we can talk about that right off the jump. So you're usually in the Bay Area, correct?
Yeah, I'm a Berkeley boy.
Berkeley boy, and you're headed out to New York to do, amongst other things, a house concert with Andy Statman, who connected
That
the
is
two of us.
right. That is exactly right. And I'm really looking forward to it. The impetus for all this was that the great gentleman John Cohen of the New Lost City Ramblers and the Friends of Old Time Music passed away last year, and I felt I really had to come east for the memorials, and then I thought, well, hey, I'm going to be staying in Brooklyn, and why don't I try and get to play some music too? And Andy and I have gotten to play a little bit together, but we had a wonderful experience. I guess it's 5 years ago. We were both at a mandolin symposium at UC Santa Cruz that David Grisman and Mike Marshall organized, and we played a set where I played guitar and he played mandolin, and it was spontaneous and really great. So looking forward to doing that again.
Nice. Yeah, and we'll post all the details about that show. It's going to be in Staten Island, I believe.
No. It's
Oh.
moved back to Brooklyn.
Oh, great.
Yes, it's been a moving target, but originally it was going to be in Brooklyn, and then it migrated across to Staten Island, and then it's migrated back, which is actually better.
Yes, it certainly is. So great. We'll post all the details, and yeah, we got a little bit of time. So let's start at the beginning. So you were born out in the
Yes, I'm a native Bay Area boy, and I got into playing the guitar and kind of old time music and bluegrass music. Nearly 60 years ago. I always make the joke that I went from the Kingston Trio to the New Lost City Ramblers in about 1 week. And then I was just got on the path that I've been on all along. I was very fortunate to have, slightly older mentors who turned me on to the music, but also all of the connections, meeting record collectors, trading tapes of live bluegrass shows, and, we traded tapes of, tapes of 78s. In those days, it was not like where you go on YouTube and find everything. It required a little more effort. And, a little more history. I was in Palo Alto as an adolescent, and so I made friends with other people who were just starting to learn about this stuff too, and that included Jerry Garcia and David Nelson. We had a bluegrass band called the Black Mountain Boys. We were late 63, early 64. We played around, and actually, now you can hear that band on the Garcia's, Garcia Before the Dead. That's what it's called. The family has put out this thing, and I had a tape of the Black Mountain Boys, and they included some of that material. And then after doing that for a little while, I decided to go to New York. I was chasing my first girlfriend, actually. And so I went to New York. A friend of mine had opened an instrument shop in Greenwich Village, right in the hotbed of stuff, right next to the Folklore Center. And So I had a place to go and hang. Now, naturally, the girl didn't want to have anything to do with me, but who was hanging out at this music store but David Grisman. So we hit it off right away, and we actually had a little band called the New York Ramblers. And we played at Gertie's Folk City, just in the hoots and stuff, but we also went down to Union Grove, North Carolina. I guess it was March of that year, and amazingly enough, won the bluegrass band competition. So that was quite an honor.
Wow. So in the early scene, like out on the West Coast, was there an overlap between the people checking out folk music and the beat poets, or was that not totally disparate scenes?
Well, that's an interesting question. My generation, Jack Kerouac's On the Road really had quite a lot of influence on us. But I would say we were kind of bohemians in a way, but we were sort of hippies before there were hippies. But also in Palo Alto, we were right there, kind of at the heart of the peace movement, because there was a bookstore that we all hung out at called Kepler's, and one of the two partners who ran it was Ira Sandpearl, who was Joan Baez's mentor, on the peace activism. So I guess that's an overlap. It's not exactly an overlap with beatniks. Beatniks were more withdrawn. They weren't really. They weren't really activists. They were. What do we say? Misanthropes.
Right. So that's interesting. But I guess some of the coffee shops. I mean, is that kind of those were the kind of gigs you were playing out there? That kind of house parties.
It wasn't house parties. In those days, economics were different, and that meant that there could be storefront coffee houses or venues, and before needing to have a license or anything. So particularly in Berkeley, there was a really amazing one called the Cabal, and they put on it was connected with the whole. There was this circuit of people connected across the country who were interested in folk music and kind of activism, and so you have San Francisco, Cambridge, Greenwich Village, Denver, Ann Arbor, Michigan. You have these people all connected, kind of flying over a whole bunch of the country that we weren't connected to.
Right. So there was a connection there. What was, now that people, now there's like universities that teach roots music and stuff. Back then, just by playing folk music, did that mean you were subscribing to some kind of counterculture-ish ideology?
Let's see. I've given that some thought, especially because, I'm going to say something about John Cohen at the memorial, and I've really been thinking about the whole deal. And, folklore studies in the era I was growing up, folklore was focused. They focused on the text. They were interested in the text, and as far as the style of the music and those things, that was not considered worthy in academia. So people like John Cohen and Mike Seeger and several others put their documentaries and recordings together and released them on Folkways Records, and these came with voluminous liner notes that were not actually liner notes on the back. It was a whole, mimeographed, booklet that came in the separate pocket of the album. And so the way I feel about it is that the actual way that this kind of academic, in a way, work, this writing about it and analysis was coming out there rather than in universities. And so I feel like that generation, by what they spurred an awareness, now this stuff is in universities and academia, but it wasn't then, and I feel like that movement, opened those doors.
Right. And what did you guys feel like you were, it seems like through music you always discover kind of an alternate history. Like what were you guys feeling and ladies feeling like you were discovering about America that might not have been on the front page of Time magazine?
Well, I was always kind of fascinated by older stuff, I was the kind of nerdy kid when I was like 11 or something that would go to the library and find the Sears, Roebuck, and Montgomery Ward catalogs from the turn of the other century and look at all that and absorb that. And for some reason, I was kind of fascinated with Southern culture because it was like a foreign country, in a way. It was less than 100 years after the Civil War, and it was still mysterious and different, and the music actually was a way to get into that, to understand it better. Not to mention that the music itself was very exciting and appealing to us, but I think that other part of it, was important to me.
And you're also learning about like these folk characters, these various kind of archetypes and mythical figures of the West, or the
Right.
bad man ballads.
Yeah, right. And many of the bad man ballads were actually, contemporary writing. I mean, John Hardy was a desperate little man. Well, John Hardy's murders, happened just, around the same years, the early part of the 20th century that the songs were being written.
Right, interesting.
I mean, it was contemporary context, stuff, and some of the murders were, there was such volatile stuff around it that the songs were banned from being sung in certain towns.
Books on the
Oh yes, yeah, no, definitely, yeah. I was real involved in, it's like I was basically living in the house where the warlocks that turned into the dead, were living or hanging out. So I have a lot of insights into the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, from what he says, I mean, it seems like before all the people showed up, there was a little bit of a kind of a heightened consciousness year in there of really smart people who were trying to find a different way to go about organizing their society or whatever. And then what happened? But maybe you would even disagree with that.
No. If you're talking about that little period, I mean, we have younger friends, who say, well, what was it like in the '60s, Eric? And I try and explain to them that, 1965 was really, really different than 1964. Really, really different. And, because of a variety of things, but, partly psychedelic drugs.
And I guess Garcia, no, it was Hunter, Robert Hunter. Those came to him as early as 62.
Hunter had taken LSD as part of the experiments at Stanford University that Ken Kesey also was involved with. So but we didn't. Our little gang didn't take LSD till May 1st, 1965, and I can remember this because our first trip was my first trip, was also Jerry's first trip, Rick Shub's first trip, David Nelson's first trip. So so I sort of saw it beginning.
Right. I guess Jerry really stuck to it. Okay, so it enters the scene, and at first, I mean, so it's a bunch of, I mean, at that time you guys were mostly playing folk and blues influenced and early rock and roll type music. That's what you're playing.
Yeah, well, we were focused on kind of the old-time country music, like the New Lost City Ramblers had introduced us to, and the bluegrass music, we kind of worked on one, then worked on the other. Immediately leading up to the creation of the Warlocks was Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions, which was kind of like being inspired by Jim Kweskin's band, but we also actually delved into the old 1930s jug band stuff, like the Memphis Jug Band and Gus Cannon, and then Pigpen was very into the blues. He was really studied Lightning Hopkins and Jimmy Reed, and so there was a little electric band that played Stanford frat parties and stuff. It was kind of led by a guitarist named Troy Weidenheimer, who could really just play like Freddie King. It was really fabulous. And Jerry played bass sometimes in that band, the Zodiacs. And the idea to go electric was actually Pigpen's idea. He said, "Hey man, why don't we have an electric band?" And so in the beginning, Ron was the front guy, the singer and kind of the focus of basically an electric blues band.
Right. Well, and he was a little bit older too.
No.
Okay.
No. Ron was my age.
Okay.
He just
he lived hard.
He just got on the path really early. Garcia's about 4 years older than we were. Maybe Ron was a year older than me. When I was playing bluegrass then in '63, I was 17, and but Ron got into his persona pretty early, which unfortunately, if you start drinking when you're 12, then, when you're 28, you might not be doing very well.
Right. Living the blues.
Yeah, well,
myth.
he lived it, He
Yeah.
really lived it. It's funny, too, because, the way it came to him was that his dad was the first white DJ on the black music stations in the Bay Area. But Ron never mentioned that when we were hanging out. I never knew that until later, because he just adopted his persona, and he lived his persona 24/7. It wasn't like, oh, I'm putting on this character, but I'm really this guy. He just was that guy.
Right.
Very honest, actually. It made his music very honest.
And in Phil's book, he talks about the first time he met Garcia. He was a little off-put because he thought he felt that everybody was kind of being deferential to this guy, and this was before the Grateful Dead were a thing. But everybody was kind of deferential, and he thought nobody could be this cool,
But in fact, I met Jerry in, I guess, 61, and so that means if I was 15, he was 19. At 19, he looked like he was about 30. And he had a very strong presence and a magnetic personality. I mean, you just wanted to hang out with Jerry because he was such good company, such stimulating company. And Phil and Jerry met, I think, at the progressive radio station KPFA. I guess there's a Pacifica equivalent in the East.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Phil was studying avant-garde music at Mills and Mills College, and but then there was a connection. And then after a little bit of starting the Warlocks and having the guy who played, who was the son of the music store guy where, they gave lessons and stuff. After, having him play bass a little bit, they, Jerry in particular, I think, said, I want something different. We got to take it another place. We can't just, have that same old pattern bass and just be a, competent but generic bar band. And so he asked Phil to play the bass, and Phil said, yeah, that sounds interesting. Now, he'd never played the bass, and in fact, I gave Phil his first bass lesson. He moved into the room across the hall from me, and he came over and said, Eric, how does this thing work? Show me. And I said, well, it's tuned like the bottom four strings of a guitar, it's all tuned in fourths, and, you play a scale like this. And he said, just did it. And I said, oh, thank you very much. Went back to his room. That was all he needed to know because it's perfect pitch, and, was really a trained musician, and, really, he just took it another place. But, well, another funny story about Phil is like a couple of years before that when we were hanging out, at the house where we all hung out and Phil was around, he came in with his buddy and he had this music that he thought people should be trying to play it. Basically, it was music staff lines laid over a star map.
Wow.
So
and he wanted you guys to play it. He wanted you guys.
Well, he was kind of say, hey, here's an idea. Here's what we're working on, and it's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, who knows? Music of the spheres, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly right.
So, so, so you were living in this house. That's the house at the corner of Haight Ashbury.
No,
No.
this was before that.
Okay, this was
No,
earlier.
this was in Palo Alto.
Okay.
They didn't get up there till to the band had been going a while. They were there by '66.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? In those days, a month was like a year. I mean, it's just like so much happened in such a short period of time. I mean, it's partly that you're young, and when we get older, it's like, yeah, that just happened. Well, Eric, that was
Right.
last year. But in those days, it was like day to day was often another whole world.
So were you attended any of the first like the acid tests? Were you
I
at
did
that?
indeed. Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
So what do people what do you think is people have wrong when they imagine what these things were like? Or what's the misconception or
Uh, well, that's a hard question
okay,
to
maybe that's the
answer.
wrong question because you don't know
Yeah,
what some people like.
what are the
Yeah.
what
So
are
I don't know
I'm not sure what are the
what was the
concep-
scene? What was going on? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess like Bill Graham was there at the very first ones, or came pretty
I don't
soon after.
think so.
Okay, he came soon.
I don't think so. That.
All right. Well, how many people are showing up to the first ones that you?
Well,
you
I
attended?
think the ones. Well, I think it kind of went from 60 people to a couple hundred people. I'm trying to. I mean, there was one that was just in a recording studio, not very big. There was one in early '66. I remember that. I think it was Longshoremen's Hall in San Francisco. So that was bigger. That was probably 1,000 people. I can I
And
I
what
have
was the
some.
scene? Yeah, let's say the longshoreman, like a big one. You had. Was there always was there always music? Was there always?
Well, no,
what was the scene?
it was just something that was happening or not happening. I mean, in other words, it wasn't a performance.
Right.
I mean, people were just tripping. I mean, they were just experiencing things, and so, they might play for a minute and say, "Oh man," or they might play longer, or it wasn't an orchestrated thing in any way.
Right. But
I
it
mean,
felt
this was all new.
right. And I guess it felt generally safe. There weren't that many people crying in the corner, or
Well, it's an emotional thing. It pushes everybody, in a lot of directions. I mean, one of the things that was said in the Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters is, never trust a prankster.
Mm.
So it's, I mean, it's, I don't quite know how to say all this, but it's not all benign and peace and love. It was kind of everything. It was kind
Right.
of everything all at once. And actually you were asking about, okay, was it connected with the beatniks? Actually, some of those characters did show up. I'm blanking right this
well,
minute.
I'm sure
on
Ginsberg was on the scene.
The Dean Moriarty figure.
Oh yeah, Neil Cassidy.
Neil Cassidy, yes. So Neil Cassidy was around, and so this is there was an edge to all this too. It was, I mean, it made sense to me, but it was. There was an edge.
Right. Do you look back, whatever it is, almost 40 years later or something?
No, how about 55?
Okay. All right.
55 years
okay.
later.
Does your view on of this, has it evolved in any certain ways? Do you look back and say, like certain things I thought were really hip were less, or the opposite, or
well, no, I don't feel like, I do not feel like that. I feel like it those experiences opened me up to to who I am, and I don't regret them in any way. I mean, well, it's like, it's hard looking back to fully remember how things were in the 50s, and why one wanted to get some other place.
Right. That's a thing. I guess this was in such opposition to the overall kind of agreed upon consciousness of that earlier decade, right? I mean, this is like.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways too. The '60s didn't really begin till the middle of the '60s.
Right.
It's almost like things went from black and white to color.
Alice in Wonderland kind of thing.
Well, kind of. Oh, right. Yes, right.
So anyway, okay. So the whole everything blows open, and you stayed around in the West Coast during that whole period, or when you hit the road at a certain time, like.
No, well, I did a certain amount of going around, but mostly I was in the Bay Area, and let's see, how do I put this? My friendships from that era, especially with the guys in the Dead, those remained there the whole time. I myself felt like I didn't really, once there was a lot of energy on the Dead, I didn't really like hanging out in that scene, because there were so many other hangers on
right.
hanging out, and I didn't feel like I wanted to be one of those people. The kind of the message I got from that experience, and kind of the message of not what Jerry spelled out, but what he projected was, the message was, make your own scene, and that's what I did. I made my own scene, not with electric music, but with the music, the other music, the more traditional music. But we took that in a lot of directions. So I basically, not single-handedly, but built a whole scene of hippies who were freaking freely and playing that music, and moving to the country, and having a whole kind of world. I mean, it was so much easier economically to live then. You could really live on next to nothing. A friend of mine had a saying, or maybe they even put it in a song: "Don't spend nothing but time."
Right. Yeah, I interviewed Zakir Hussain recently, and he was saying exactly the same thing, that, you know, what a hamburger cost, or what it cost to go across the bridge, or that how a door gig could kind of carry you for a few weeks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And by the 70s, had a scene where we were living on a piece of property where we didn't have to pay rent, and we played Renaissance fairs and several times, for like 6 weeks at a time for certain periods of the day, and then we had enough money to just live, and other little gigs, and not like it is today.
Now that's something I had no idea about, that I learned from Dennis's books. There was some kind of connection between the psychedelic scene and the Renaissance fair scene.
Oh, well, of course, definitely a connection, because, in fact, Owsley's cohorts were the guys who had the one of the very first early music bands at the Renaissance fairs, the Golden Toad. And, in fact, the Golden Toad guys were part of the, acoustic music scene, communal living scene that I'm talking about. That's those people, that's that, it's like, that's what was ironic, is that I, was at the center of that scene kind of when it was starting, and then I kind of said, well, I'm going to go, make my own thing. But the thing that I kind of got to and made was actually had a lot of the same people in it.
Right.
So it's like these connections. So yes, there definitely was, the Golden Toad guys and Owsley were all, in it together.
Right, and then I read that later you also studied more deeply Irish music.
Yeah, in the 70s, I got very into Irish music. That was kind of spurred because a friend of ours in this little scene had spent a bunch of time in London, and he'd fallen in love with kind of the bar band kind of Irish music, more Irish in London than there are in the whole island, and it was like, kind of contemporary pub music of the 50s, and a couple of the real stars of that music scene, not financial stars, but musical stars, turned out to be in San Francisco. These guys would go to London first, then they'd go to New York, then they'd go to Chicago, then they'd go to San Francisco, and it was I think partly that big cities in those days, was kind of like the Irish kind of controlled. Had a lot of influence in city government. So if you were an Irish guy and you needed work, why, the city contractors you'd have a job. Right. And so anyway, two wonderful accordion players, Joe Cooley and Kevin Keegan, were both in San Francisco, and I mean they were spectacular. And so, that drew you in. When you have kind of star players, then you say, oh, I got to work on this. And so I got very much into that for a lot of the 70s.
And did you find some interesting connections between the Irish music and the American folk music?
Well, I mean, obviously Scots-Irish music definitely fed into the, the fiddle tradition of the South, definitely, and a lot of the people who were in the South had those roots. So it really it became, and a lot of the you could hear that, oh, okay, this Irish tune is where this, old-time Appalachian tune, that one came from that Irish tune. And so, it's a real direct link. So it just fit into kind of stuff I was attracted to, especially, I like the kind of spooky modal tunes, and plenty of those in Irish music, and so it just made sense.
Right, you're also attracted to just kind of weird Americana, odd time signature things, or like strange subject matter, right? Is that more?
Oh yeah, all that,
yeah.
and it's kind of you could say odd time signature, but well, one of my jokes is that Cajun music in particular, I say, well, the only bar lines in Cajun music are when you're waiting to get a beer.
Oh, I never knew that about Kate. I never really listened to it in that way. So that's interesting.
Well, in other words, it's
not the way to think about it.
Well, a lot of square dance music and like Irish music for sure. There's it fits into a certain length, 32 bar tune, so that the dance works out. But a lot of the older Appalachian music, the guys who just played on their own, well, they might, make one phrase longer and one shorter, and, they just, they didn't lose the beat. It's all just one, but,
right.
It might not all fit in the same things. And Cajun music is definitely that. It's just like I say, one music, and the singer might sing it a certain length one time, and then the fiddler might, space the phrases out slightly differently. The accordion player might do it different than that. The steel player might do it different than that. That's like not considered odd, because it's melody driven, and so you're not. Let's see how well. One way I put it is that you're not blowing over the changes.
Right.
The melody is the core of it, and the timing may be open to interpretation.
Right. And as a guitarist, you kind of achieved something with flat picking that a lot of other people weren't even daring to try in terms of facility and this kind of thing. What do you think is the key to developing just in terms of a practice technique? Like how did you build up that facility?
Well, I think adolescent obsession is really good.
I missed the boat on that one.
Yeah, it's like if all you're really doing is trying to play the guitar, all your waking hours, then you get better.
Yep.
At least that's how it was for me. I mean, I just when I got into it, then that's just all I really did, and so I got better pretty fast. There's they put out this Grateful Dead box set, so I was listening to what I sounded like when I was 17. It's kind of like, oh my God, Eric, you've hardly gotten any better since then. It's like it's just as far as my ability to draw sound out of the guitar and play fast. It was definitely there, and it just, I've learned a lot more music since then, But
sure.
As far as my sort of, the most important part of my, facility on the guitar, sort of my kind of sound that comes from my right hand, well, geez, just obsessive playing for a few years got me there.
Nice. Well, I'm just about out of time, but I was just curious. When I did interview Dennis, he talked about Garcia's wisdom as him being somebody he considered like wise, at least as applied to other people, and and I wondered if there was any anything musically or otherwise that Garcia said to you that stuck in your memory banks.
Oh, I don't really.
No.
I don't really have a quote.
Okay,
but,
that's fine.
But I will say that Jerry had a very kind of present attitude about life. It's like the moment was important, and he was always looking at things different ways, and making connections that you might not have thought of, so yeah, I think that is wisdom.
Sure.
Of some
and I
kind.
guess it sounds like something you've emulated yourself.
Yeah, emulated, or I don't think emulated. I just absorbed it. I never sort of said, "Oh, I'm going to try and be like that." It just went into my way of living because it seemed natural, and I have to say that I was like a weird kid. I was always a weirdo. Yeah.
Well, luckily the times came around and it became cool to be a weirdo.
Yeah, it's all
that worked out for you.
Now, well, it worked out for me. Now it seems like it's getting to be not such a good thing. But anyway, it's been delightful talking to you.
Yeah.
And so I guess I've kind of filled up our time here, but spouting.
Oh no,
off.
I wish I had more time. Actually, it's that I have to run. Otherwise, I'd have a million more questions. But
okay, well, we could do it again sometime.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Okay, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Hope to
Great
see you
chatting
soon.
with you.
Great. Bye-bye.
Yeah. See you.